Welcome back to Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. I'm personal financial planner, columnist, and financial therapist Rick Kahler. Research tells us that 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, not logically. For nearly 4 decades, I've been helping people make better money decisions. So what makes my financial worldview different from most financial experts? I blend the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Good money decisions are not just about the money. So let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to another episode. I think some of you know that I do a somewhat of an open office hours once a month. It's typically on Friday at 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time. That's the time zone that God forgot, according to Dick Wagner, who lived in Mountain Time and in Denver. If you think about it, there's only 2 major cities in Mountain Time. It's Denver and Salt Lake City. Rapid City, while is being a major city in South Dakota, is not considered a major city by national standards because there's only 120,000 of us here. At any rate, last month we had a real intriguing discussion. Usually there's 2 to 6 people on that call, and I really always look forward to it because we talk everything financial therapy on it. And a colleague of mine that was on the call delved into a discussion with me on the intricate relationship that individuals share with their money, particularly those facing financial challenges in the lower income bracket. And we began talking a lot about financial literacy programs. And I did talk about financial literacy in the 7th episode, which was many episodes ago. And we got into something, a view of that I had not thought of and not developed. But to back up a little bit, financial literacy programs have been in the existence since the 1970s. And the intention of financial literacy is to aim to arm an individual with the knowledge and the skills necessary so they can make informed and responsible financial decisions. And I think that's admirable, and to many of you it kind of might be well, duh. Of course, people need to be financially literate, and that is really important. Even as important it is because we know that money is a 21st century survival skill, it's still something that by and large is not taught in our public school system, and probably not a lot of private school systems. I had my children in a private school system for part of their education, and I don't think financial literacy was really ever mentioned or ever taught in any meaningful way. So financial literacy, is necessary. It's important. And there are a lot of financial literacy programs that have been successful. But based on my research of a lot of the programs, there still seems to be a limitation in their effectiveness. It's nowhere near 100%. And oftentimes the impact makes a change in a very small number of people that attend. And I have found that there's several factors that contribute to the constraints of effectiveness of these programs. One is a lack of engagement, and some of these that I'm going to go through were articulated by Peter from Ghana in a recent podcast that I did. But just a lack of engagement. Financial literacy can be rather dry, and sometimes it's just really hard for an individual to get really engaged in it, especially when they've been resisting engagement, which can be part of the problem. It can present a one-size-fits-all approach. It's really hard to tailor financial literacy to a specific individual. So a lot of the content can be really generic and not be relevant to some diverse populations or cultures. There often is inadequate follow-up or support if you go to a class on financial literacy. I teach several of them for our local community education program. There is no follow-up. There is no support. I just come in and verbally turn on a fire hose of financial information, and that's it. It's kind of like throwing spaghetti at a wall. You hope some of it sticks. There can be very limited access to information, and I think the biggest one, and the biggest one that my research has indicated, would be a failure to address the impact of emotions on sound financial decisions. Now, to those of you listening to this is another duh. We know 80 to 100% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, but most financial literacy courses don't address the impact of emotions. And it would make intuitive sense if the research is true that around 90% of financial decisions are made emotionally. Maybe that's the first thing that we should address. So I am definitely a supporter of financial education. And like I said, I engage in one of the local programs that does that. So in the programs that I teach, we cover basic financial skills, money management, the fundamentals of investing, the fundamentals of financial planning. Typically, I don't know, I probably can cover all that in about 2.5 hours, 3 hours. I've also tried to offer additional classes through our community education program on financial emotional intelligence and other aspects of money psychology. What's so interesting? There's a notable discrepancy in attendance. The technical classes thrive. In fact, the one on investments is typically oversubscribed. I've heard of people staying up to 12 o'clock at night when it first opens to get in because the classes fill so quickly. Now, one of those reasons is the fact that the room that I've used to teach that in is limited to 12 people. So, if it was 50, well, maybe we'd only fill half of the class. But the interesting thing is those classes I've offered on understanding the intersection of money and emotions, they struggle to attract participants, so much so that I stopped offering them. I mean, we'd get 1 or 2 or 3 people signed up for them. So it's not a hot topic. It's we'd much rather read ourselves to financial health. We'd much rather take a class and get it than the prospect of looking at our emotions and our history around money and how that has contributed to our financial circumstances that may not be so positive. So again, and this is really just irrespective of income level. People often avoid examining the relationship between their money and their emotions. We know that the prevailing money script is that the more financial knowledge I have, the better. That all I need is more knowledge about money. That's pretty ubiquitous in the work that I've done. But my years of experience, and I've been at this for well over 15 years, consistently demonstrates that this simplistic view of all I need is a little more education, all I need is some financial literacy, just isn't accurate. Now, again, I want to emphasize that improving financial literacy of low-income individuals is a positive step. You cannot separate financial literacy from emotional understanding. You can't separate finance from therapy when it's called financial therapy. So this knowledge is critical, but sometimes the knowledge can't be accepted, cannot be heard until the emotional baggage, the emotional blockages to receiving the information are understood and resolved within our system. I've talked before about Luis Barajas, who's a respected author and a financial expert in California, and reaching out to the Latino sector. And he's worked in this area for many, many years. And I remember a speech he gave, it's probably over a decade ago now, when he emphasized all the financial literacy in the world is not going to help poor people. Now that's kind of stunning, really. Financial literacy is not going to help the poor. And he went on to describe a phenomena in his community, and this applies to any community that is underserved, especially financially, or makes up a broad swath of working poor. And that is when someone begins to break out of that community, when they start to have some financial success, there's an innate response, both within themselves and within the community from without, to bring them back into what is familiar and what is comfortable. And sometimes the ways in which people without tend to do that are not very pleasant or appropriate. So it can be a real struggle. That's the concept of the financial comfort zone that I've covered in books that I've written and co-authored, of how we tend to stay with what's familiar. So what I wanted to add to this particular segment or edition is that it's really important to recognize that universal fears and emotions around money and obtaining financial literacy is something that transcends economic status. It's not just about the working poor. Money-related challenges extend beyond specific socioeconomic groups. So, while it can really impact the poor, even people with wealth may not be as financially literate as commonly assumed. And you might struggle with that a bit. How can that be? I used to have a money script that said people who have money understand money. Well, like any money script, that can be true in some circumstances and false in others. The emotional struggles regarding financial decisions and the intellectual struggles of understanding finances, being literate about money, are universal regardless of one's lack of wealth or the amount of wealth that they maintain, the amount of money that they don't earn and the amount of money that they do earn. So that's really what I want to emphasize. Because while the challenges do exist for both the extremely wealthy and those in extreme poverty, my focus lies more on addressing the struggles of the affluent who seek my services. Obviously, owning a financial planning firm, even being a financial therapist, people seek me out that can tend to pay for my services. So this is the worldview and where my experience comes from. I've witnessed the isolation experienced by some wealthy individuals, where their wealth has completely alienated them from ordinary social interactions, which can lead to really profound loneliness and a desire for anonymity. Now, maybe this is the first time you're hearing this. I remember the first time I ever heard this, and my reaction was not one that I ultimately was proud of. It was, oh, come on, get a grip. You got money. How can that leave you in any worse position than people that struggle for knowledge with money, that don't have money? And as I have worked with people that are affluent, that in many cases have more than enough, what I have witnessed especially in those more ultra-rich individuals, is a yearning for normalcy, a yearning to be known by their name, by their first name, rather than the public persona they have or by their financial status. If you think about it, someone who is very rich or very famous don't have the luxury of being able to go into a group of people, or think of it as a 12-step group if you're familiar with 12-step programs, and say, "Hi, my name is," pick any name, a first name of a famous person. My name is Adele. They can't do that. I remember really poignantly the isolation amongst the wealthy was underscored by an elderly woman who would come to our on-site workshop weeks, and we'd have her down to talk about how was it to live life with more than enough. And she arrived, popped her head into our group room, said hello. She kind of paused, and she says, I don't know who's worse off, the ultra-rich or the ultra-poor. She paused again. Well, at least the poor have one another. Now think about that. I've talked with, I remember a billionaire once who said, "I just cringe when someone finds out who I really am." Everybody wants connection. Everybody really wants to be seen and to matter for who they are, not a projection of who they are or what they have. Ultimately, I'm saying. I can think of another wealthy woman who just tried so hard to blend in with the middle class. And she highlighted all the challenges, all the insecurities that excessive wealth had brought into her life. And she expressed this. She says, "My friends tell me that they don't know anyone else that tries harder to be middle class than I do." So it's a thing. It's a real thing. It affects those that have and those that have not. And just assuming that somebody with money knows how to manage it, they may know how to make it, but that doesn't mean they're financially literate in how to keep it. And I could go into example after example after example of people who have made money and have made really poor decisions because of the emotional blocks, the emotional baggage that blocked the information needed to know how to keep it. So, financial literacy is important for all spectrums. And as financial literacy programs evolve, I am hoping that there will be a growing recognition of the need to integrate emotional intelligence into those programs. One of my friends, Partha Iyengar, from India, is a global pioneer in incorporating emotional intelligence into financial literacy programs, especially with the work that he does in empowering women in India. His approach, which is blending these two aspects of emotional intelligence with financial intelligence, is really a model for overcoming the challenges that dog financial literacy programs. And I think his website is WFAN in India. You can Google him, IYENGAR, Partha, and take a look at his programs. So, in kind of wrapping this up today, I just want to emphasize that financial literacy is multifaceted. It is not just an issue to be dealt with and understood by the poor. It transcends socioeconomic classes. I've said so many times before that one of the most dangerous people to themselves is somebody who thinks they understand how money works, and they do only to a degree. And they suffer from the cognitive bias of overconfidence. I see that. I see that a lot in people that have money. Understanding and addressing then both the practical and emotional aspects of financial literacy is crucial, irrespective of income or net worth. So, in the end, a holistic approach to financial education is really essential that we start to bake into our financial literacy programs. And I can only hope that we find a way to do that, because there is so much fear, so much resistance of doing the hard work and taking a look at our emotional triggers, our financial traumas, in helping us to clear the space in our heart and in our head so that we can then really be able to act on the financial literacy that we do have that's suppressed, or take in and actually hear that literacy for the first time. So, thanks for joining me, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks for joining me, Rick Kahler, for another episode of Financial Therapy. It's not just about the money. This is where I combine the nuts and bolts of financial advice with the emotions that drive making them. Remember, every financial behavior, whether it appears illogical to you or others, makes perfect sense when we understand the underlying beliefs, feelings, and thoughts. Sign up for my weekly blog at financialawakenings.com. I hope you'll join me again for our next episode.